You're watching The Sports Objective, the podcast for Pirates.
ECU, Pirate Nation, Purple and Gold family, stand to your feet, put your crossbones up, and lean side to side, yeah, and lean side to side, yeah, and lean side to side. Come on, yeah. Welcome to the island, man. It's crazy in here. A whole sea of purple and gold waving it.
Welcome in to the Pirate Football Playback. It's presented by L&K Custom Homes. Pirates go down the season-ending game to Tulsa, the home game, 29-27. With us right now, Bubba Rosenbaum. What's up, dude?
Not a whole lot, Dave. Needless to say, a disappointing finish. Really, was hoping that we were going to be able to hold off Tulsa yesterday afternoon. We had our best offensive showing of the year, at least from a statistical standpoint. You had 24 first half points, not nearly as much production in the second half, but still over 400 yards in the game. And it's just a shame there once the defense got the stop to get us the ball back at the Tulsa 24-yard line. First and 10 there with 2:24 remaining, that we didn't do what we needed to do to seal the deal. And we'll talk more about that as the show goes on.
Matt Semenza, what's up, dude?
What's up, guys? I just took down my 15th and final plate of apple pie from Thanksgiving. I officially feel like a fat slob.
Not at all. I'm going to start, just like I say, every year on the Monday after Thanksgiving, I'm starting a diet tomorrow, which will last from about 8 in the morning to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, they say that. Bays, what's up, man?
What's going on?
Yeah, guys, they say that you gain between Thanksgiving and New Year's, you gain 6 pounds, and so it's I guess that's why the gyms in the area in Greenville, they're like ramping up their radio ads, I've heard, in the last few weeks. But Bays, disappointing game, obviously, 2-10. When I looked at the clock, guys, help me out, Bubba. Wasn't it like 2:30 something left, or maybe you guys can remember 2:30 something left on the clock? And I'm going, if we have 3 or 4 plays, we ice this game. And next thing I know, the fumble happens, and I was just like, I can't believe it. When I saw that one play, 2023, that's the epitome of our season right there, is that one play. We think we're going to win, but no. But I wanted to get your take, and then Bubba and Matt as well.
Yeah. Hey, guys. Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, man, that we talked about it a little bit off the air, that this season really just kind of started off the rails, with the quarterback position and leadership there as part of the offense. And, during the season, we saw some, offensive line, a lot of moving parts early in that season before things kind of got settled in to the offensive line. Obviously the back and forth between Flynn and Garcia early on, that didn't settle out till mid to late season. We saw some drops from the receivers. We were, lacking some playmaking ability on the offensive side of the ball. Defense was outstanding, but that one play at the end of the game was kind of a microcosm of how the events of the season played out. It just, started off the rails, finished off the rails. It's just kind of how that season was. And, it's going to be an interesting off season, as things get started, officially last night, to what these next steps in the off season are going to be to correct, the obvious errors and the obvious kind of deficiencies of this team, and how the parts and pieces are going to come back together. Obviously, there's a lot on the table that needs to be sorted out. But yeah, that was unfortunate. It was unfortunate for the seniors.
Yeah.
To go out that way. They played hard. I knew that game was going to be tight, was going to be close. The freshman quarterback from Tulsa, he kind of reminds me of Holt Naylor's, kind of similar back, from the
Very
area, getting to play for Tulsa. So he's got a bright career ahead of him. But very disappointing for those seniors.
No doubt, Matt. I wanted to ask you, being at ECU, and obviously when you see that play, kind of not the same thing, but obviously that 2014 UCF game where we had the game won, and then they have the Hail Mary. That was that's one of those games that will haunt me forever, and I think this game will in a different way as well.
Yeah, I did think of that game when that happened yesterday, and at some point it does. Andrew mentioned it's almost a microcosm of the entire season, and it really is. I mean,
yeah,
it gets to a point where what else can possibly go wrong, and you're in that situation yesterday. You're up 1 point, you're in plus territory. Your defense just had a great stop.
Yeah.
You're in perfect position to win that game. The one thing you can't do is put the ball on the ground. And unfortunately, that's what happened. And, I really want to know more about what went into that process, because I'll be honest, guys, I'm really upset about the direct snap play call. Not because that's a hard play to execute, because it's really not. But what makes me upset is that we haven't run that play all year. And now you're in a situation where, you need to be, all you need to do is run the ball. That's all you need to do. You don't need to try anything crazy. You don't need to try anything different. And for Donnie to call that play at that particular time really, really makes me scratch my head. It actually makes me very angry. And for Coach Houston not to overrule that play call also makes me angry. There was just no need for it. I can't figure out why that happened, but hey, this is where we are. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's another loss. It's a painful loss for, again, Bays, you mentioned the seniors. I agree with that. That's tough for those guys. They invest a lot, but also the fan base. I mean, for the fans that showed out yesterday at that game after this season, those are the diehards. You got to give those people a lot of credit. You guys being some of them. I can't go because I live so far away. But for that to happen, I felt bad. I really did. I felt bad for the fan base. I thought it was just very poor coaching, in that spot, guys.
Hey Matt, what's interesting is, all season long, we were banging our heads against the wall with first down RPO runs into a brick wall.
Yeah.
And second down RPO dive runs into a brick wall. And ironically, that's all they had to do.
Right.
We would take those brick wall, obvious RPO dive runs that we witnessed throughout the whole season. And that's all they needed to do. They didn't need to do anything fancy. And, it's interesting, Mike Houston's comment, in regards to that play, I think there was just a little bit of miscommunication again, for whatever reason, between, him and Donnie, as far as trying to gather together. He said he was looking at the kill clock play sheet, just trying to sort out what was going, and then the ball gets snapped. So, obviously a little, miscommunication on that end, between the signal callers and decision-making at that point. But ironically, all we needed was the same first or second down play we've been running all season long to close that game out.
Yeah. Hey, Bubba, I was going to say this real quickly, guys. It was really funny. This lady that's really passionate, I love her. I need to introduce myself to her and her husband, but they're a couple rows diagonally from me. And she goes, all year long, you've been running the ball up the middle. Why didn't you run the ball up the middle? And she's screaming that. And I was like, good point. Because you needed what basically 3 plays or 4 plays. And even if you don't get a first down, you pretty much make it impossible for them to have a shot.
Well, you never got the opportunity to burn timeouts. And I think that's probably what they were going to be after, is just dive plays to kill the clock and burn timeouts.
Yeah, obviously, and I used this example earlier talking about this with someone. not saying that this is what I wanted to do, just saying worst case scenario, if you have 3 plays where you don't gain a yard, you're going to be attempting a 41-yard field goal, which is well within the range. And I know he's had Andrew Conrad has had mixed success, but of late, from pretty much that distance in, he rarely misses. It's 45 plus where it's been more hit or miss, which you would expect. But in my thing with that play call, kind of as Matt said, generally speaking, a direct snap, is it that hard of a play to execute? No, but it's something. If we had done it this year, and maybe been once or twice, if at all, in that situation with the game on the line, you have a very sure-handed, running back in Raj Harris. Rajay hardly ever fumbles, and the same can be said for pretty much all of our running backs. That's something we obviously are a very, on the whole this year, we're a very poor offensive team, but that's something that we did very well, is protect the football, from a fumbling standpoint. So in that situation, why would you go away from your strength? Rajay had 150 yards rushing yesterday.
Yeah.
It just blew my mind because initially I thought, well, crap, it's a bad snap. But then I saw, that Alex was moving to his right. So just wasn't the time to attempt to run that play. If we'd have run that play early in the game and it results in a fumble, you wouldn't think as much about it. But it just was not. I did not agree with the timing of it, and obviously Coach Houston didn't like it either. He should, as he admitted in the post game, vetoed that and said, called a timeout. Done whatever he needed to do to get us out of that play call, but unfortunately that didn't happen. And I'm talking with other coaches, both high school and college, about that later on last night. They were in total agreement. Certainly not going to call any names, but one said it was an embarrassment and one said idiots. But just one of those things, and it's a shame. I had a knot in my stomach last night. I'm always going to be ticked off when the Pirates lose, but I did not think, losing that game yesterday bothered me as much as it did, if you'd have told me going in.
Yeah.
But the way in which we lost it, when we shouldn't have lost it, I left the stadium with my stomach in a knot, felt that way all the way home, and I felt the way when I woke up this morning. It was just made me sick for the team as a whole, but especially the seniors.
Yeah, and guys, this is really. I'm sorry, Dave. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
That's okay.
When you really think about it, right? Like, one of the things we've all talked about a lot this year was there's been a lot of question as to whose offense this is, and a lot of people were under the thought that Donnie is running what Mike Houston wants him to run, and there's another school of thought that Donnie has full control of the offense. And, without me being on the practice field, I don't know which one it is, but I think my biggest disappointment with that situation yesterday is, your job as the head coach is to step in and intervene when you have to, especially in the last 2 minutes of a game. That's where you really make your money as a head coach. Those decisions are what separates, the Nick Sabans, from just your regular D1 coaches out there. And very disappointing to me that play wasn't, overruled and that Coach Houston didn't step in. Now, I know he mentioned he was looking at his clock chart or whatever it was, but that we need to be better than that. And I'm just being fair. I'm being tough on Coach, but I'm also being very fair that just like players get critiqued every day in the film room, that was a terrible blunder by both Donnie and Mike. And, I just have to be honest about it. I have to call it the way I see it. But that is just, at this level of college football, it's just really, it's unacceptable, in my opinion. It should not happen.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say, guys, is the fact that when you have a situation when it's 3 or 4 plays, just like you said, like you guys said, it's a matter of you run the ball up the middle, And by the way, before I say that, hats off to Raj Harris. He looked more like himself last night than we've seen in a while. So I wanted, and that may be, and I was going to ask you guys, it may be because being fair on both sides, that Tulsa's defense is not good, but at the same time, he looked more like his old self, the best we've seen him in a while. And I love that kid. And so I was extremely happy for him. And I was thinking about him and the seniors that played their tails off, and it just really hurts to lose that one the way it happened.
Yeah, no doubt. Rajay, he was grinding out, a very tough season this year. Collectively for the season, he averaged 3.8 yards a carry, 40 yards a game. He topped off at 500, just above 500 yards for the season. But it was a grind for him. It was good for him to be able to get those 21 carries yesterday, convert them to healthy 156 yards, being able to break a couple big runs, that obviously helped with his stat total for the season. But, it was tough going not only for Rajay, but for the whole running back room. I mean, I was at Annapolis for the Navy game, and, these teams, I guess, just the way the offense was how the offense was producing through the year, it was fairly predictable. And at least most of the time, it seemed these defenses were keying in on a lot of, what Donnie was trying to do. So, the running back room really never got going. Even when Javius came back healthy, I don't know if he was really ever 100% after that injury,
right,
halfway through the season. But, it was absolutely good to see Rajay. It helped that, I think all things being equal, that was two teams that were fairly, equal, not only in the record, but kind of how the roster is and how they've produced. So we knew that was going to be a good football game from that standpoint. And, it was good to see the running game get loose a little bit. And it was good to see, Alex be able to connect with these receivers, Chase being able to go over the century mark yesterday. He's had a solid season, and obviously Jalen and Josiah having those touchdowns, that was good capper for those guys.
No doubt. And with this game, it's really hard to accept, but it is what it is. And 2-10, I was thinking about Matt with Vegas saying we would win. What was it? 2 games. Bubba, you can help me out on that. But I thought about that last night driving home, and I was like, I hate Vegas. No, but seriously, I really was upset with, I thought we were going to win that game. We didn't. And so now that we have the game, we're after that fact, and we're now into what's going to be tomorrow, isn't it, called Black Monday, where coaches are fired. We had, by the way, guys, I'm happy I was right. Unfortunately, Duke is losing, it looks like, Mike Elko to Texas A&M. But I think they're getting a good coach. And now I don't know how much money they're going to pay him, but the last coach, they just had to buy out for $75 million. But just want to get your thoughts on moving into tomorrow. Offensive coordinator, Matt, what guys do you like about hiring for offensive coordinator for next year?
Well, I think I've said to you guys, like, I'm really focused on the type of system I want to see here, like, regardless of, what happens, with the offensive coordinator, or potentially, what happens with Mike Houston. I do expect him to be back, but I've seen stranger things happen. But in terms of, for me, I want to see a certain style here. And I really like the Jamie Chadwell style of offense that he ran at Coastal and now Liberty, for a few reasons. I think it's unique. I think it presents a lot of challenges for the defense because you don't see it very often. Option principles from the pistol is a unique offense. And I also think you can run it, as Coastal and Liberty are proving. You can run it without 4- and 5-star offensive linemen. This is a good system. It's unique enough that it could work in Greenville. So for me, it's more of like, you look at the types of, a lot of people want to go back to the air raid, and I'd be pretty happy with that. I could live with that. I just know that the current system we're running,
It's got to
where we
go.
want to be a power football, balanced running football team, it's just not going to work here. It's just not going to work. We're just not getting those types of players. And there's nothing wrong with that. You have to acknowledge what you are, though, at some point. And that's not who we are. We just don't get that type of player here. That's more of like what Michigan is. You get
Right.
road graders up front and you can just mash people and move people off the line. So for me, I'm looking at more as opposed to like a particular name out there. I know Kyle loves Rich Rod, and I really like the idea of Rich Rod too. But it's more about a style that I think can be successful here. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, Matt, I think, I really think they need to figure out what they want to do first and what their philosophy is. They obviously had a tough time in the transfer portal with, converting some of the bigger money guys on the NIL side of things. And so moving forward, is that going to be a problem? If it's going to be a problem, are you going to have to play younger players? Are you going to have to play the young guys? Mike has been reluctant to do that. I know we had some freshmen sprinkled in, Cesario Riles, Javius Bond, Chase is a freshman, right? I believe Chase is a freshman.
Yes, yeah. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so he does sprinkle some freshmen in. However, I guess my point being is you're going to have to run a simpler offense. And if you cannot convert with, NIL or competing NIL with funds needed to get the type of players that we need, and you're going to, be bringing in younger players, high school kids, whatever it's going to take to get talent here, you're going to have to run a simple system. And then with Mike Houston in mind, he's a defensive minded coach. He's going to want to burn the clock. So I don't know that air raid is a perfect fit for a Mike Houston team. He's proven, we've watched in games where we kind of scratch our heads on time clock management or play calling or whatever it might be in the middle of a game, but he's just eating clock up. And so I think whatever offense is probably going to be RPO style heavy. And, it's got to be a simple offense. You've got to be able to bring players in. You got to utilize their abilities. You can't sit and wait for kids 2 to 3 years to develop anymore. You got to get them in the mix. And so it's got to be user friendly. And, I just think with Mike in mind, it's going to be some sort of offense that's going to eat clock up. And that's why I kind of tend towards believing that maybe it's not like a, pass crazy air raid style offense.
Yeah, and the basic thing is it doesn't matter, guys, right? As long as if it's the players we have, and we've got to be able to score points, right? I mean, that's the thing is that, like Bubba was talking about, the sad thing is yesterday we were way above our average for the season and still can't get it done, Matt.
Yeah, no doubt. And like, what would you guys think? And yes, Dave, at the end of the day, you have to be able, in today's world, you have to be able to score. And so, but what would you guys think of that style offense I mentioned?
I like it.
Chadwell style, the uniqueness of it. I mean, because again, you have to do something different that fits the type of player you can get.
Well, another thing, Matt, is that not that we're military, obviously, or FCS, but we are not, like what you said, we're not the Michigans or Alabamas of the world. And we don't have, and Andrew, you make a great point. Y'all's coach, Coach Logan, said that it's not about player development anymore. He said he called it he was talking to another coaching friend. If you guys heard the Logan Zone from a week ago Friday, he called it roster management. And I thought, I've been meaning to tell you guys off air that I forgot that, but roster management is what he called it.
Yeah. I mean, with the way today is with the transfer portal, the thing that if you're not getting players on the field quickly and able to develop players quickly to get them, producing, they're gonna transfer and go elsewhere. And that's not a bad thing. Maybe the players that are transferring are guys that don't fit your system anyway.
Right.
So you're always going to have attrition that way. But you certainly have to be able to recruit and be able to bring them in and plug them in right away. So the game is completely different than when Matt and I played. And, heck, that doesn't seem that long ago, but it was. But, these kids, it's funny. I have a daughter that is playing collegiately now as a freshman. And, I told her during the recruitment process, I said, look, it's so much different than when I was going through. You don't need to have the pressure anymore as a high school senior, because if you don't hit a home run with your pick, whether it's ECU or whatever school, if you don't hit a home run, guess what? You can transfer and you can go find your second home. And so these kids today, they just, Matt and I had all kinds of crazy pressure when we were going through recruiting, make sure that we were finding the home that we were going to be at for 4 years or 5 years, and that we were making a connection with the coaches and that philosophies were right and blah, 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 blah. That's not the case today. These kids are like, okay, who's going to pay me? And I'm going to go there. If it doesn't work out, I'm going to go somewhere else. How would you feel about that, Matt?
No, I agree. And I think, you go back to, I think the coaches really, well, actually, let me back up for a second. I always laugh when I see coaches talk about, players hitting the portal. And I always laugh when I hear coaches talk about loyalty. I mean, it's just because what happened was for years and years, the coaches were just, they'd come into a program, they'd sell the players on, team and loyalty and blah, 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 all this garbage. And then the next biggest contract would come, they were gone. And so over time, the players caught on to that, and they started to see this thing for what it really is. This is a business. Coaches are trying to make money. They're trying to elevate themselves, and now players see it the same way. And to your point, if you're faced with sitting for 2 years and not playing versus hitting the portal and maybe having an opportunity to play elsewhere, it's just too easy to hit the portal. And I think the unintended consequence of that, guys, is now you're going to see less and less kids, and you're seeing it with baseball now. College baseball, very few players out of high school are able to come in on even a partial scholarship for baseball now, because they're all coming. Coaches would rather have a 21-year-old from a JUCO or from the transfer portal than a 17 or 18-year-old kid out of high school. But it's no different in football. I mean, you're just going to have less and less kids being recruited out of high school and more guys being recruited from the portal. So, but I do think coaches started this trend with their continuous movement, if that makes sense. Hopefully I'm explaining that correctly.
No, you did 1,000%. By the way, a little sidebar really quick. We're a week away from the transfer portal opening up. Matt has a apartment there in the portal, I believe December 4th through the 18th coming up for this year, that 2-week period. And of course, in the spring, they'll open that portal back up and Matt has to go back to his apartment in the portal. But I just want to get your thoughts. Obviously, Matt, we've talked about it at length, and Matt, Andrew, you can chime in, and Bubba as well. But obviously the quarterback situation and offensive line have got to be top priority, right?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Yeah, without a question. I mean, I think the coaching staff would agree that, the quarterback, they didn't legitimately have a starting quarterback for this caliber of conference to realistically say we got our guy to go win a conference. That just didn't happen this year, and that cannot happen again next year. That's number one is you got to have a quarterback with the ability to go win a conference. That's number one. Offensive line is obviously it ranks right up there. They're going to have some pieces to work with, some depth players to work with as they move into next season, depending on what they're able to do with the portal. And then you've got to get some playmakers. That I think for the most part, between Mike Houston and Blake Harrell, they proved that, at least this season, they proved that, the parts and pieces that they had. Now they had some really good ones. They had a lot of experience across that defensive line, to the point that, I know I'm wandering, but to the point that, in a lot of the bigger games, they were rushing 3 defensive linemen, and still getting to the quarterback, which, I think they've proven that they've been able to develop some players, especially across the defensive line. The linebackers that they had transfer in, produced right away, which was exceptional. I feel like defensively they have a good beat on what they want to do defensively, the type of players that they want to get. I think keeping Deontay Johnson around and keeping Revel around that needs to be A1 top priority defensively. There's a lot of great parts and pieces that are going to come back next year, but those two are pretty vital pieces to that defense as far as what happened this year. But back to the offensive side of the ball, yes, quarterback, offensive line, and playmakers, on the receiving side of things, those are priorities.
And Matt, being a defensive player, Bubba also wanted you to chime in. One of the questions I would ask is, what about with having our defensive coordinator, Blake Harrell?
Well, I'm really worried about Blake Harrell right now. I'm going to be very honest. I'm really worried that because he had such a strong year, that he's going to be poached. I think that's a major concern for me, because when you look at where we're at as a team, we know it's a total rebuild on the offensive side, right? So the goal really has to be, if you can keep this defense together, because as Andrew just mentioned, you have good pieces defensively.
Oh yeah, special teams look good this year, by the way, Andrew, too.
Yeah, so like if you can, my main goal is like right today, tomorrow, I'm bringing defensive guys into the meeting rooms and I am selling them on staying at East Carolina, because number one, that's going to enable you to keep a good defense together. But you can really focus your efforts in the portal offensively where you need them to be. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Blake Harrell. I say that as a compliment for him, because he's done an outstanding job this year. Certainly, I love his scheme. I love the way he coaches. He did a great job, and like Andrew mentioned, I mean, guys like Deontay Johnson. I mean, he had a fantastic year.
Yeah.
Chad Stevens, man. I mean, these guys were really good, really stout against the run. So I think that's really what you have to focus on. You got to find a way, keep this defense together, and then focus your efforts on a total rebuild on the offensive side of the ball. Bubba, I know you were trying to chime in.
Yeah, Robert Dedrick here on YouTube is saying, with so many transfers or more good players being overlooked, undoubtedly, this is something Matt and I were talking about earlier today, and because of obviously our quarterback situation and what could have potentially been last year, not necessarily with this quarterback, but someone of this caliber from the JUCO ranks. You had Joey Aguilar that App State brought in. They had a similar situation in East Carolina where you had a proven starter exiting the program. Obviously for us, Holton Ahlers, for App State, Chase Bryce. And they had a guy on campus, Ryan Berger, who coincidentally, is also from the state of South Carolina, like Mason Garcia. But they felt good about him, but opted to also bring in Joey Aguilar, and Ryan Berger barely edged out Aguilar in fall camp, but got hurt in that season opener against Gardner-Webb. Aguilar came on, and he has not relinquished the job. He has thrown for right at 3,300 yards, 33 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. So just a great example of the type of guy that you can get from the JUCO ranks anytime, but especially in this day and age where so many people are going to the transfer portal with a 4-year transfer.
No doubt. And I guess what it comes down to, guys, is the ideas of up until the last couple of years ago, you could actually have guys that you could have. I hate to use the term. I don't know what the right term is. Project, a guy that would maybe take longer to develop. Now, those guys are pretty much going to be weeded out, right? Because you don't even have time for guys that are tremendous talents to get them ready for the college level.
Yeah, it's a brand new day in college football. I mean, the way you approach things is going to be totally different now. But some really interesting comments up. There's one comment I see here, changing subject a little bit, but Robert Matthews, can we get that one up? I saw a kid the other day put a $70,000.
Oh yeah, I saw that earlier when he put that up. Yeah,
I don't know if we can get that up, but man, I gotta say, Bubba, can you get that one up there?
it was
Yes.
back up.
Yeah, look at this.
Sorry, yeah.
No, it's all right. I mean, Bays, this as a old school college football traditionalist, if I was a coach and a kid put this out there, I would tell him
Bye-bye.
in no uncertain terms to kiss my ass. I mean, good Lord. Can you imagine? I mean, that's where we're at now. That's where we're at.
Well, Matt, we're hearing with some of the top recruits in the country that they're asking for basically appearance fees for their official visits.
Oh man.
And that,
are you serious?
Oh yeah. Like you're like, that's really happening. Like,
wow.
So yeah, it's a completely different world. And what's unfortunate is it's kind of like the Wild Wild West. This is going to be ever changing and evolving. And right now, the players have all the control in the world, and they realize it. And they're going to milk it until NCAA or somebody puts clamps on it, which I don't know if it's ever going to happen. But they're taking advantage of it, and it's a just completely different deal. And I can't blame them. I mean, you can ask for whatever you want to ask for. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. But I saw another comment. Kyle made a mention as far as Mike. When I was talking about Mike Houston and kind of being on the defensive side of things, and it's just an observation. Being pretty close to the program, Mike is a defensive-minded guy, and I think maybe to one of his faults, collectively over the last couple of years, but it really showed maybe this year is, he put a lot of faith in Donnie, and right, wrong, or indifferent, right? So we're just talking about what's on the surface. I think Mike, being a defensive-minded guy, he put a lot of faith in Donnie to be the CEO of the offense, and that probably came with a lot more power than maybe should have had, and maybe there should have been a bit more oversight. That can be obviously up for debate, but Matt can talk about it too. There's a lot of coaches, in college football. There's a lot of coaches in professional football. They don't have anything to do with the other side of the ball, whether they're an offensive coach or a defensive coach. They hire the guys on the other side of the ball, and they might not interject the way that we think they should interject, but maybe that was agreement that they had. And, I can't, say what should have happened or what shouldn't have happened. But, as far as it is what it is, and, unfortunately we saw what happened. And that was the decision that he made as far as moving forward with Donnie and having Donnie having the power that he had. So, obviously everything's on the table right now, and things have to change. And, I think John probably will give Mike another year to make his hire on the offensive side of the ball. And the clock's going to be ticking to make sure that decision was the right one, and that the things that happened this year don't happen again. And that you learn from them and you move forward. So, I just wanted to comment on that because Kyle had mentioned that up, and I figured that would probably have been a talking point had he been on here.
Yeah, and to that point, I would bring when Mike is interviewing potential offensive coordinators, and this is all based on Mike still being the head coach at East Carolina. I know most likely, I get it. Most likely he stays because of the finances and all that. But there is growing sentiment within this fan base. I mean, if you listen to the message boards today, there are a lot of people that want to see a head coaching change too. But, I personally, I would bring Blake Harrell into the room. If this is a situation where you're interviewing OCs, I would have Blake Harrell heavily involved, because the defensive coordinator can tell you, hey, Blake, what are the things that give you the most problems as a DC? Like what keeps you awake at night as a DC? Who are the OCs that you see that you're like, man, I don't want to have to face these guys? I think that input would be really important. I would have Blake heavily involved in that process. But hey, we'll see how it goes. I think everything's fluid right now, guys. I mean, it's just the nature of college football. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen. And yesterday, with the way that game ended, a lot of angry people. You don't know. You just don't know what's going to happen. Do I think Mike Houston's going to be back? I think he probably will. I do. But do I think you can make a fair argument that we should get a new head coach? I think that's a fair argument to make. Absolutely.
Well, you're looking at with Houston, I think he'll be back. And I think the biggest thing is, Andrea was talking about special teams. You look at the special teams and defense. So it looks like for us that right now the offense is what we need to focus on, not to, as we were talking about, the defensive side of the ball with Blake Harrell, and of course with the players, which we need to. We've talked up on the screen right now for those watching or on live or archive. For those listening to the podcast, Team Boneyard is something we need to focus on a lot. But anyway, we need to focus on that. And by the way, John Gilbert told Mike Houston to hire offensive coordinator. So you don't tell somebody that you're going to fire to hire offensive coordinator this week. So we do know that for sure. But
the only thing I'll say, Dave, and this is one area where I disagree, that was prior to yesterday's debacle. Just keep that in mind. That was prior to yesterday's debacle. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see where it goes. But yes, I mean, last week I would have said, yeah, based on that conversation, it looks like Mike's going to be back. He's going to hire. But yesterday was so egregious. You never know, man. You don't know what's going to happen in this crazy world of college football. So we shall see. It's going to be an interesting couple of days here.
No doubt about it. And we'll have to see how things go. But certainly, I think we know what we have to. We know what we have to do. And I will say this to you guys: if firing Mike Houston would solve all our problems, then I would say fire him tonight, right? But that's the problem, is that for everybody that wants to fire the head coach is not the only problem we have. And I would say that if you're looking at it, my personal opinion is I think we're going to have to be careful on saying we want the head coach gone, because that obviously can hurt us getting a good offensive coordinator as well, if Houston is going to be saved, and I think that he will.
Well, I know Matt and I have talked about this, privately, but I'm all for. I've seen enough, between Blake Harrell and Mike Houston on the defensive side of the ball. I know it's going to be an ultimate challenge to try to keep Blake. I think Blake has probably earned the opportunity to move on, and if he does, that's awesome for Blake. That's what we want. Ultimately, is to have success enough that our coaches are moving on, taking better opportunities, and someone else will have to step up and carry that torch. But it is. I've seen enough defensively that I liked what I saw this year defensively. As far as Mike goes with this team never laid down. They never, despite just, as we mentioned earlier in the show, the season got off completely off the rails offensively, stayed off the rails offensively through the season, and the defense continued to fight. They continued to play, and that's an indication of coaching. And these players did not lay over at any point in the season, let alone towards the end of the season when things were pretty bleak. And so there is something to be said for that. That's leadership. Traveling with the team, honestly, this team is, they had a lot to be pouty about this year and this season. And, these kids are really good kids, and on the road, they're first class. And that's a reflection of the leadership. And so, with that being said, I mean, I've got no problem rolling on with Mike for another year, giving him an opportunity to fix the problem that is the offense. Now, we've seen with other programs that can be done very quickly, with the right hire as far as an OC and taking advantage of the transfer portal. And so whoever that person is going to be, they need to get in very quickly, and they need to start working on that project ASAP. So this can't be if that is the move, this cannot be a long process. This has got to be something that, they're going to have to pull all-nighters to figure out who this person's going to be and hit a home run with this hire. And then that person's got to hit the road recruiting right away. So it's a Herculean task, but as we've seen with other programs, it can be done. It can be corrected. So that's where I sit with it.
I agree with you, Andrew. I do think the players continue to play extremely hard. You've seen teams. I will say that I think that showed a lot of character on the players' behalf, because you do see a lot of times in college football when a team is, losing in such a bad fashion like we were, you see people or teams, just sort of lay down. You saw that towards the end of Scotty Moe's tenure here. So I do give the guys credit. I do think the portal, this is kind of funny, right? What do you guys think at this point? I think in some ways the portal keeps these players honest, because let's say you're a player on a terrible team, right? You're losing, if you're going to go into the portal after the season, you better keep playing hard. You know what I mean? You better keep playing, because you're putting that film out there for everybody to see. So I think in some ways, another unintended consequence of the portal is that it keeps players focused, because, hey, whatever you put on film is going to be seen.
And Matt, like, to go back to my point, we're in a school, as far as coaching decisions and NIL, we don't have limited funds. So we don't have all kinds of crazy options of what we can do. So there's got to be a lot of things on the table, and funding is one of them. I know, fans would love to see pull trigger on, this, that, and the other, but unfortunately it's not the case. There are limited funds available. And with that in mind, it's pretty hard, even if you go out and get a new head coach, it's, I know everybody's talked about a buyout of the head coach, but the problem is you have to build a whole nother staff, and that's going to be competitive. So, it's not ideal anywhere around. Obviously, all of this would be remedied by a better year, but it is what it is. And, that's why John Gilbert gets paid what he gets paid. He's got to make these tough decisions.
No doubt. And I just wanted to say, for the fact of with Houston, if you bring in a good offensive coordinator, and hey, let's give Blake Harrell a raise, because Matt, you're a defensive guy. The guy has been here a few years now, and the defense played out of their minds. We had 3 games we lost by 3 points or less. 5 if you add 5 games that are 10 points or less. We had the Navy game we talked about, 10 points. It was all that was scored, and we get shut out. So it's one of those things where with our program, and let me say this all the time, it's funny how people say we don't have money, but yet we have money to pay for 2 coaches. We have an indoor practice facility. We have the NIL. There's a lot of stuff that we need to pay for.
Hey, listen, at the end of the day, guys, the donors, the big donors are going to be that's where things happen. If a big donor steps up and says, I want Mike on, I'm going to pay for the buyout, he's probably gone. But to your point, yeah, we don't have unlimited money, and that's where you look at Texas A&M. Good Lord, I mean, they're in a whole
exactly.
They're not in a different league. They're in a different universe.
It's crazy
in terms of the finances.
Speaking
but it's all. I mean, I think it's going to be a very interesting couple of days. I think if I'm John Gilbert, I am going to address this situation within 48 hours. I'm going to call a press conference and I'm going to address the situation. And I'm going to basically say, this is what we have decided to do. This is the direction we're going to go, whatever it is. I think you have to stay out in front of it. I don't think it's a time for silence. And I think that the fan base deserves, a vocal leader right now. And they want to know the direction that the program is heading. So I just hope whatever happens here in the next few days, I hope that, our leadership is very vocal and addresses the fan base, because at the end of the day, the fan base, that's really who you have to keep happy.
Oh, you do. But let me say this too, but I'll say this and move on. But we also need to have a coach who's here for a while, like a Logan that you guys had, because if we don't, every time now we have a losing season, our fan base is going to say, fire the coach, fire the coach, fire the coach, fire the coach. And so that's another thing that bothers me, because we are Pirates, we're ECU, and we are passionate, no doubt. But in the past, we didn't have guys with losing seasons to be fired. We didn't have social media and online stuff, keyboard bandits. And that's my disappointment. You have a guy who won the first bowl game in 10 years. We're not talking about a team that's in the SEC that wins 10, 12 games every single year. We're talking about a team that's 7, 8. Our program is 7, 8, or 9 wins. That's who we are. And if you don't believe me, look at the history of our program. We've only had 10 wins plus twice in the history of our program, going all the way back to 1932. So if you want to play the numbers game, we can play the numbers game. But I'm just telling you, we're better off by keeping a guy. And if he doesn't make it, I'll be the first one to tell you fire him next year if things don't work out. But I think that this Houston's worst season is this year in the history of his career as a coach. I don't think that he's taking it lightly. You can look at him last night at the press conference and tell how much it told and how much it hurt him to not only lose the game, lose senior day, go 2-10. He knows what's at stake. He talked about that in the press conference. He even said he was the head coach and it was his responsibility. He's going to change it. And, I know there's a lot of people that don't respect him. They don't believe him, but I do believe that he's going to make changes. He did an offensive coordinator. I think there's other coaches, you guys, I don't know who it would be, but I think that it's going to be some more offensive coaches that may not be back next year.
Yeah.
I don't want to speculate because I really don't know, but that's what I was told, overhaul of the offense.
Yeah. At the end of the day, this program needs to be competing for championships. And this program needs to be competing year over year at a championship level. And that needs to be the minimum. And, I think Mike Houston understands that. I think he understands that they were woefully, not in a position to do that this year. And I mean, we're not talking about, showing progress next year. If Mike is retained and is able to rebuild the offense, and if he has to, if he loses Blake and has to fill the shoes of defense coordinator again, this is not going to be a you have time to rebuild after a 2-win season. This is, you got to get back to a championship level. And that needs to be the expectation. And I think that's where John Gilbert is with this. And I think they expect championships, at least compete at a championship level. And, that's where it needs to be. That's where it needs to start. So that's where our focus needs to be. Whatever needs to be done in the ideas that we're competing for championships.
I agree.
No,
And I will say that now, are you going to have people, if you have a losing season, to say fire the coach? Sure you are. But, the masses, the reason the masses are upset is, yes, we're 2-10, but it's more so why we're 2-10. With the quarterback situation and then just being so historically bad offensively. If we would have gone 5-7 this year, like we could have, if we'd have just been below average offensively, sure, you'd have had some people upset, but it would not have been anywhere to the extent of what it is, because in this year, with what we lost, it was expected to be a little bit of a dip, but not to the degree in which it was.
Yeah, and I think that's been my biggest. I think that's where a lot of my anger has been this year, guys. And one of the reasons why I'm open to a coaching change, because I hate the fact that we didn't address the quarterback in the offseason. I remember saying in the middle of summer that I didn't think our offensive line was going to be able to compete. And you guys know I said that. I said every show I talked about the offensive line in the spring and the summer. What really angered me was, and I was very vocal about this on this show, after the SMU game, when we punted the ball, and I thought that was waving the white flag. So it's really a culmination of things. And, for me, but I think Bubba makes a good point. It's not so much just the losing season. It's how did we get here? How do we get here? So that's all I really have to say. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I've been very vocal about it. But at the end of the day, the decisions will be made, the highest levels of the administration and the biggest donors. So we'll see. But let me ask you guys this, just take it away from this for a second. Let's just say Mike stays for another year. Let's say we do get the new OC. And let's just say, hypothetically, we're going to have about $600,000 in NIL funds, which I think is pretty realistic at this point. Andrew, I'll throw it to you first. What are the first, besides quarterback, because I know we're all going to agree on quarterback, but what are the second positions besides quarterback where you would invest that money first?
Yeah, obviously quarterback, but then offensive line and wide receiver.
Okay. Dave, what about you?
That's where I'm spending.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. And also, by the way, guys, there's supposed to be a push. And Pace says, yeah, thank you, Pace. You read my mind, Pace. My brother from a different mother. He said Ravel and OL, offensive line. So my thing is with us, we've got to look at the positions like we were saying, offensive line. Because we've got to have, Matt, I will give you credit. We definitely agreed that preseason, the offensive line was going to be the Achilles heel. We just didn't know it was going to be, I never dreamt in a million years that it was going to be as bad as it was. Maybe 2 or 3 guys that we can really write home about if I'm being generous, Matt, on the offensive line. But we've got to have an offensive line. We've got to have quarterback. I agree with you, Andrew. We need depth at wide receiver. And then with the defense, we've got the tough task of giving a raise to Blake Harrell. And then the NIL, like Pace says, Ravel. And, I mean, he's blocking extra points. And we've got guys blocking punts. I mean, our special teams, like I said, Andrew, not because you're on the show, but remember what a disaster our special teams was last year? We got that corrected. So now we need to keep what we have with defense and special teams and have the other, speaking of complementary football, offense. What about you, Bubba?
I agree with quarterback, O-line, wide receiver. Then obviously, like Matt mentioned earlier, I'm going to have to do what you can to keep the defensive side of the ball together with Savon Revel and other key pieces. But you gotta address those offensive needs. You cannot go through another season like this. You have to do everything you can to use those funds to set the new OC up for success.
Yeah, in fact, Daniel says that too. Revel and 5 offensive linemen. I agree with you, Daniel. There. Brad says isn't Larson a senior, being an inconsistent punter. But I think I thought he was gone this year.
No, Larson's got another year.
He's got one more year. Okay.
Yeah. They're losing. They're losing the transfer. Trafford. He was a senior. He's gone.
Okay.
No, the specialist Larson. I think there's ample room. Larson had a couple of decent games. He's got to improve overall.
Like the drop ball last week.
His whole career has kind of been, solid and then not solid. Solid. He's just inconsistent. He's got to be way more consistent throughout a season. I thought Andrew Conrad did a great job. He started off a little shaky, but all in all for the year, he finished up 18-25, 72%. And down the stretch was just great. Revel was great on special teams. Obviously, he had a couple field goal blocks. I think all in all, special teams wise, they were decent. But I know you talked about NIL with Revel being a top priority. Deontay Johnson, I mean, he was exceptional this year. I don't think he gets enough. Him and the defensive line, I don't think they get enough credit for what they did. Those guys played tough all season long, and I can't stress also on the offensive side of the ball how many balls were dropped by our wide receivers in critical moments. Literally drive killing drops that shouldn't have been there. Where the season, those guys making plays, those things stack up over the course of a season, and so playmaking has got to get better next year, 100%.
No doubt. And Bubba, with you with the quarterback situation, is it safe to say that maybe this is speculation? Alex Flynn, we talked about on the show, he's definitely going to medical school and won't be back next year.
I have not heard definitively. We'll give credit to Stephen Igo here. He said that following yesterday's game, while he was still in Town Bank Tower, that he saw Alex on the field taking some pictures with his dad around the Pirate State of Mind at the 50-yard line. So, if I had to guess, I would say probably so, but nothing clear cut just yet. Alex addressed it last, I guess, Tuesday with the media, just saying that he was not walking, but he did say it was very possible that yesterday was going to be his final game, but he didn't rule out returning either. So I'm sure we'll find out here in the next week or few. But in the meanwhile, you certainly it's going to be intriguing to see, first of all, who he hires OC, and then whether we hire an OC who may have that potential to bring a quarterback with him, where you have a package type deal, and a guy already knowing the system.
So we had a question about, I feel like that Garcia's gone. What about Jeter? We had a question, I forgot who asked that earlier, about Jeter not playing yesterday, but do you guys see him back?
I don't know. I thought it was foolish not to get him playing time, even a series here or there, especially when you have 4 games.
Right.
When you have 4 games,
the Gardner-Webb game.
Yeah, I mean, these are the decisions that for me I don't really understand about the staff, and I know Donnie had addressed that in a press conference 2 weeks ago. That he was basically trying to win the game, and I get that, but listen, we're not the first program in college football that has to play the backup. I mean, tons of schools out there do this. So
Matt, this is where I go with, this is where I struggle with this coaching staff between the combination of Donnie and Mike, the ability to develop a starting quarterback, right? There's a trend. There's a trend there of the inability to develop, and I know throughout the season, these comments came up constantly in press conferences with Mike and Donnie, as far as getting Jeter on the field. Seemed like it was a question every week. And, they just continue to say that, if if he's in the game, then that means he was ready to be in the game. And it was alluding to maybe he's not prepared enough to get in the game and to help them win. And that was a key decision maker. And so that's where my earlier comment, as far as having a system, that you can easily develop, and the system is easy enough to get talent in the game. And I went out to practice a number of times, and Jeter, sure, he's a freshman, and sure, he makes mistakes, but he was pretty exciting. He's got a big arm. He's got some mobility to him, and
Very athletic.
the kid loves to throw the ball down the field. And that's one thing we obviously were missing this year. So, that is something that moving forward, you've got to be able to run an offense. You'd be able to get talent on the field, and it's an indictment on the coaching staff if you're not getting the talent on the field. It's not, I know a lot of times we want to point the finger to the players, but that you got to have a better track record of getting these guys on the field quickly.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to, a lack of creativity from Mike Houston, and sometimes a very conservative nature. I mean, even things like, listen, I know Mason didn't perform this year, but I do think there were situations in the second half of the season where we could continue to utilize some of his skill set, which is, how about 3rd and 1, right? Quarterback power, some red zone packages for him. But I thought of that because of Jeter, and I was thinking, why can't we, just like Steve Logan used to do, Andrew, where he would have a package for his backup quarterback early in the game. And it could have been, it could have been just any game in the middle of the season. You would see Steve Logan put in his backup for a series, sometimes 2 series. And it might have seemed a little odd at that point in time. Like, I remember sometimes as a player, I was like, this is kind of interesting. But there was a plan, and the plan was to get that player experience to prepare him for the future. And, I won't harp on it too long, but I do agree there's been some issues with developing the quarterbacks, obviously. And I would have had a package or two for Jeter, where you utilize some of his talents,
Right.
Even if it's just his feet, put in a little speed option for him, something.
Yeah, that was my thing, guys, is that, with Logan, with you guys, you were talking about that series. I was going to mention that tonight, Matt. You read my mind. I guess I was going to mention earlier on, but also the fact that, Andrew, when we're trying to win games and we're so close, like I said, we lost 3 games, 3 points or less. We've lost 5 games, 10 points or less. So when we're trying to win football games, these guys know on this show, always talk about trick plays. Am I saying to, put out a whole bunch of trick plays? No, but we certainly needed to. There was times when we needed to go for it on 4th down and we didn't, or, like a fake punt or something like that. And I know it's not easy, Andrew, because you're a punter, but I'm just saying, it has to be something that in other words, we practice. It has to be something that we don't do a whole bunch of trick plays. I'm not calling for that, but to put in a few wrinkles that these teams haven't seen, that's one thing of the Houston era that has been lacking for me.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Steve, when we played for Steve Logan, it was sudden change. I mean, I don't think Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but over the last few years, have we seen much sudden change, offensive decisions? When we played for Steve Logan, if there was an interception, if there was a block punt, if there was, anything that transpired where all of a sudden the game is changing suddenly. It's called sudden change. Steve Logan's coming back with the very next first offensive play is, H-back reverse or some kind of crazy play that's taking a deep shot, trying to catch the defense off guard, when they're quickly running off the sideline, discombobulated onto the field because they weren't expecting to, Steve Logan was hitting them in the mouth every single time. And more often than not, we connected on those plays. And so, yes, there has to be some originality, in the sudden change game. There has to be some originality. We had quite a few turnovers this year, and I don't recall coming out with big sudden change offensive decisions, where they're taking deep shots right away on first down. I don't think I saw any of that this season. We definitely didn't see any fake punts or fake field goals or anything like that. But, I think Mike had such a fear of the position of this offense that if he honestly thought that and this is not defending anybody, this is just my observation. I think that Mike knew that his defense was so talented and so good this year that if he could just keep them close enough, that maybe the offense could put something together, down by 1 touchdown or down by a field goal or whatever it might be, a tight down by 10, whatever it is late in the game, then anything can happen. And, so a lot of those, decisions to try a fake punt or try a fake play or do something that was going to set the offense back further and take field position into a consideration. I think that's maybe where Mike was, where a lot of that stuff went on. And that's being very conservative. That's not having, any riverboat style in them. It just seemed like he was very conservative this year. That's a defensive minded guy, and right, wrong, or indifferent, I think that's what transpired.
Yeah, and so we have to right now. It's hard to believe it's after Thanksgiving weekend where we feel like we should be making bowl reservations. We should be talking about speculation on where do you think where we're going bowling. But I did want to let's see, where was it? I lost track. Here we go. Chuck had a question for you guys. I want to throw this up here. How many wins for Houston to keep his job for next year? He's saying 6. So in other words, we have to go bowling next year. And my answer to that is absolutely. I think that's the floor. That's not the ceiling, but I'll give it to Matt and the rest of the guys.
Yeah, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, and in year 6, guys, it's going to be year 6. Okay. At some point, you have to win. You have to win. Beyond 5, 6, 7 games. For me, it's 8 games, and 8 games in the regular season, and then your bowl game. So potentially 9. That's what it has to be for me. I mean, it's just at some point when you're making $2.4 million a year, listen, there are expectations. There are heavy, heavy expectations. Right. You have to win. And this is not a great conference we're in now. This new watered down American. It's a winnable schedule. So that's it. That's my expectation. And I'm sticking with it.
So in other words, we would go potentially, you'd have to go 3-1 in the non-conference, and you have to win 5 out of 8 in the American.
For me, yeah, for me.
I don't, and it's totally. I showed you guys that in the group text about the records this year and who we have on the schedule this year, and we don't have a bye game in Michigan. That was a fun trip. I enjoyed every single. My kids got to see Ohio. They wanted to go to Ohio really bad, but anyway, they got a chance to see a potential national champion team. So we don't have to worry about. Pretty much that was going to be a difficult game, and we did not win that one. And we lose 30-3. So you pretty much started out with an L.
Yeah.
Which we have obviously starting out the season with Norfolk State is probably what we would much rather have than no excuses at all. Michigan, the App State game is going to be tough. That's home. You have Old Dominion and Liberty away, and Old Dominion, you would think that you have a shot at them. But you've got to be like, if you want 8 games, you've got to go 3-1 in the non-conference. And when you have Liberty, they're a tough team. You have App, that's a tough team. Norfolk State and ODU, you feel like you should be able to get 2-2 on them, but we'll see.
Yeah, got a lot of comments coming in on that.
Yeah. I know people don't believe we could beat App or Liberty, and I know based on where we are right now. But it all comes down. I'll tell you this right now. It all comes down to we've got to have a huge, and I know that you guys, but we got to have a hire that a proven offensive coordinator. We can't have a guy that's. I just don't see a guy that's young and is up and coming, I should say. I don't see how that's going to like translate to for the fan base.
And I think that's where it's going to get really difficult because, you know, I don't want to go the FCS route for this hire, guys. Like I want a proven guy at the FBS level that has done it against big time DCs and big time programs. But
gotta get your checkbook, right?
Well, that part, but also there are a lot of coaches out there who are going to see this as a lame duck position. And it's going to be tough you're going to really have to sell somebody on the longevity of the position to come in, an experienced coach that is. I think that's where it's going to get really difficult.
Yeah, Matt, I agree. You know, with Mike's situation, if Mike is retained and the clock's ticking, it's going to be harder for him to, you know, I guess it could work both ways. I mean, you know, you get a young guy in here that does a great job. You know, obviously he sets his future up well, but you know, at the end of the day, it's with any position that maybe is an outgoing coach or a coach on the ropes. You know, that sometimes that's a tough fit. So, you know, maybe Mike stays within his circle, you know, and hire somebody that he has a close relationship to or prior past. You know, so I don't know the direction that it's going to go, but I agree, Matt. It could be, you know, difficult to get the guy maybe you want under the current circumstances.
Well, that goes back to we don't want to have a guy, and even though I want Houston to have another year, I've been very blunt about that. If he picks somebody that's going to do a conservative offense, then I would agree with you guys. Then he's not going to be back. He's going to have to pick somebody. He's going to have to pick somebody that's way out of his comfort zone. And if it's true that he is a defensive coach, so he needs to bring in a guy and say, hey, you have control. Don't you think control is going to be another issue too, guys? Is that he needs to let the offensive guy coach offense? I mean, meaning that
I don't think he's had a problem doing that.
Yeah.
I think that's been that if there's a problem, that is his problem, is that he gives too much authority and too much decision-making power. You know what I mean? Like that maybe he needs to take some of that back.
No doubt. And we've got to obviously, I'm not sure. I think it's close to $500,000. That is it, 400,000 to 500,000 also for Blake Harrell being defensive coordinator salary. I mean, I would love to see if we could do that to give him a big raise.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely pay up for Blake Harrell's services. We got a lot of interesting comments just as I'm scrolling through here. Let's see, Justice. Can we throw up Justice? You know, I'm done supporting next season unless Houston is out. He embarrassed the program beyond belief. So you're going to get a lot of obviously different opinions here. We saw I know Kyle had a comment back there. You know, a lot of people saying 7-8 means minimum to win. Here's Kyle Barber. The system we run plays develop way too slowly. You have to have an extremely good offensive line and a really good running game to even try to play quarterback in the system. Yeah, I agree. And you know, like I said earlier, you know, Kyle, I think I said this to Kyle a few weeks ago. If we had Joe Namath behind this offensive line,
it would be brutal.
We'd be better, but
yeah,
you know, it probably still wouldn't be pretty. Just
because I disagree to a certain extent.
Let me hear it, Baze. Let me hear it.
Look, man, a starting quarterback changes all things, and you know you got a guy that's capable of if he's inside an offense that he understands, he's able to make adjustments at a line of scrimmage. He's able to do some things that maybe he's able to check out of something that's an obvious read. I didn't see much of that. And I think Donnie alluded in a press conference earlier in the season, as far as, sometimes we're banging our heads in a wall watching first down, RPO dives into the line of scrimmage, for 1 yard loss every single time. I think Donnie noted that, sometimes Alex needs to be more aggressive there. So maybe he needs to check out, or maybe he needs to, decide of another RPO option other than that giving up the dive, and for a 1 yard loss, maybe check out or maybe do something else there, and the argument could be made, maybe Donnie makes another different play call than the same one on first down every time, and putting that decision in Alex's hands. But, arm talent, I saw throughout the season, times where, Alex had time and just maybe didn't have the arm to push it to the opposite side of the field to an open receiver. I saw plenty of drop balls, in
tons of drops
from the receivers. And ultimately, sometimes leadership, I know Alex probably didn't anticipate being a starting quarterback. I know, being a college athlete, you would think, shoot, man, I get the opportunity, I'm a big, bad ego guy, and I love to be a leader. Both of these quarterbacks, Mason and Alex, I never saw huge leadership from them. I know the team rallied around Alex just because he's a tough kid. He answered the call. He answered the bell. He did the best he possibly probably could do. And, he took a beating this year. And, I'm just saying that if you have a legitimate starting quarterback, sure, you can make up for some offensive line deficits. Maybe your run game, still struggles a little bit, but that arm talent's going to spread the defense out a little bit. You're going to be able to do a bit more play action. You're going to be able to, do a few more things than you were able to do this year. And this year we were not that far, honestly, from winning football games. And you put a starting quarterback, legitimate starting quarterback in the offense this year, we have more wins than we finished up with. There's no
We're going to
question
be bowling.
So sure, you can talk about the offensive line, but that is not the reason why we lost football games. I can tell you that.
So about as far as there was a question, Bubba, help me out. There's a question. What's the kid from? I don't think that he's going to come here, but the kid that went to Southern Miss, who went to JUCO, what's his name?
Ty Keys.
Yeah.
Well, I've certainly not heard that he's out on the Pirates. But Ty Keys, now from Northwest Mississippi Junior College, if I'm not mistaken, began his career at Southern Miss. Tremendous athlete. We know James, our Southern Miss friend. Obviously closest friends with Kyle. He was excited about that possibility, or said that we should be excited about that possibility. Not very proven, but some nice potential there. I would like to see us pick up someone, that whether it's a part-time starter or at least a part-time starter, whether it's at the FBS or FCS level, with a significant body of work.
No doubt. And by the way, guys, Robert Dedrick. Oh, there we go. Blake Harrell's salary is $344,500. That's from our good friend Stephen Igo. Hoist the colors, and so he needs to see a bump in pay.
And also, just for point of reference, according to what I was able to find, Donnie was making around $437,000 or $438,000, and he had received very significant pay raises over the last couple years, going from right around $300,000 to the 437.5 or whatever it was.
Yeah, I think when you have a defense, that's the best defense, guys. What, in 14 seasons? I mean, you have to go all the way back to 2009 with the second championship for Conference USA with Skip Holtz. So, and those great guys that went on to play the NFL, especially that defensive line. But we'll see how that plays out, and it's going to be interesting. This is probably, we always talk about there's no real off season now because you have the portal starting next week. It'll be interesting to see who we keep, who we lose. We lost Tegan Wilk, but Matt, by the way, Matt, I wanted to say to you and Andrew, when he lost his job a few weeks ago, didn't you think that was coming from him? I mean, he hasn't really had playing time in 4 games, like since SMU, maybe.
Tegan Wilk?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wasn't sure what was going on there because I know he was banged up too.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure how much of that, but yeah, I mean, I think Tegan, he had some really good moments here. I mean, I thought he was pretty solid against the run. I think that from his perspective, he's earned his degree here. I guess he's got one more year and he probably wants to just give it a go somewhere else. I respect that. He put in his time here, and like I said, he had some real good moments, and not sure what happened with the playing time and versus the injuries and all that, but certainly wish him well,
Exactly. He's a Pirate.
Yeah. He's definitely a Pirate. He paid his dues. I'll tell you guys, the guy I really hate to see go on the back end is Julius Wood. I mean,
oh yeah,
he really had a great season. I mean, he flies around, he can cover, he's durable, he's a leader. He opted to stay at East Carolina. He could have left last year. I know he had some offers to do so, and he had a really strong year. And I think he's got a chance to play at the next level.
That's going to be interesting to see for sure. And how many people like Revel, how many people, I'm hoping that we can get him straightened out as far as money is concerned. And a lot of those guys, defensively, they've earned it. And that's what the tricky part is. But it goes back, there's a lot of things we can't control. But as fans, one thing we can control, let's see, up to date Blake Carroll increase was to 456,674 for 2023, according to USA Today. That's from 344,000. Okay, so he did get a significant raise this year for this season, and we'll see about that for next season. So you're all is good. We're looking at next season. Do you guys what are you guys thinking as far as we talked a lot about the transfer portal? What about high school recruiting?
In regards to what are you asking?
I'm sorry. So when it comes to how is that going? I don't follow it as much as I should. I love Igo. He is the expert on that. But how do we look for this coming season? Because Matt and I know this whole team, we talk a lot about the transfer portal, and I know that high school recruiting is getting harder and harder if you're a high school guy to come in because their expectations are high that we need you to play now.
Yeah, I don't know. I know this staff. I know Mike likes to develop his offensive linemen, so I know he's got some freshmen in the hopper. That it takes a long time when you're recruiting high school offensive linemen. They come in, man. They're like puppies, man. They're not ready to go physically, and the rare ones are, but more often than not, you're having to build those bodies or reshape those bodies, getting them in the weight room, getting them fed the right way, and turning them into beasts. And I know that's a process, and I know they've got some guys that they're high on, but you're gonna have to continually do that year over year. But I don't know as far as scholarships. I don't know actively who they're recruiting. I know there's a quarterback out there that they've is their guy, but as far as how you utilize your scholarships, how many of them you use for transfers and how many you use for high school kids. I don't know how all that shapes out anymore, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think one of the things I like that this staff, you can see a little change in philosophy right now. They are evaluating junior college offensive linemen. I think they had at least 2 in this past weekend. Apparently, one of them committed. The name hasn't been dropped yet. But the junior college route is a good area for East Carolina to look at because everybody's fighting over the portal. All right. And people have more money than us. So a lot of people are ignoring the junior college route right now. And I think that's a good area for us to look. But for me, especially in this situation, considering the fact that, we were just talking about how many wins does Mike need next year to potentially save his job. If I'm Mike Houston, I would bring in no less than 5 offensive linemen from the portal, grad transfer, JUCO route, guys that I think can contribute immediately. 5, and that's minimum. I'm talking 5 minimum. That's what I would do. And everybody's got to fight it out for a spot up front, because for us to compete for a championship the way we want to, we have got to get better up front. And to Baze's point, you're absolutely right. We can't wait 2 or 3 guys for high school players to develop up front. We need them now. So that's my thought on it.
Waylon makes a great point, guys. He says, what's up, Waylon? He says, we made a living on DL JUCOs in the early 2000s, and we've been talking about that, Matt. I know that transfer portal is what we've been talking about. You have the apartment in the transfer portal, but we don't need to forget about there are some guys that we have to pay attention to in high school recruiting. We just can't take the special projects anymore. And then also we cannot live without JUCOs at all, guys. I mean, you think about, there's so many great guys that were 2-year players that came over our way from JUCO.
No doubt. Baze, what do you think about that, going the JUCO route for offensive linemen?
I like it. I mean, they, just like we talked about with high school kids, that are developing in just that need 2 years to develop. It's no different. There's guys that end up at JUCO that need to do the same thing. And, sometimes you get kids that don't take advantage of that opportunity to develop and get stronger, get bigger, and you got others that do take advantage of it. So, we've played alongside a lot of JUCO guys that had a lot of success, and, there's plenty of talent in JUCOs. You just have to, we talk about it all the time. You just have to be dialed into it. And, this coaching staff, whatever changes are made in the coming days, weeks, whatever it might be, they're, like I said earlier, they're going to have to hit it hard early. This thing cannot drag on just for the pure purposes of recruiting and getting out there and getting the guys that they need, and not getting, the seconds and thirds and fourths and fifths that, can happen pretty quickly in the recruiting world. So they're going to need to have a plan of attack. And, I hope to your point, they're utilizing junior colleges to find those big bodied offensive linemen that can get in there and produce. They just didn't have enough parts. They had maybe 6 or 7 parts on that offensive line that they were using consistently, and that's just not enough. The depth wasn't there. The strength wasn't there. The depth wasn't there. The guys that were there did a Herculean effort to get through the season, as much moving as they were moving around the line of scrimmage, different positions. They all played different parts throughout the season. But yeah, I mean, they need a lot of parts, brother.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just going to ask, I know that with respect y'all's time, I know it's getting close to 9:00 Eastern while we're doing the show live. Do you guys have anything before we go? It's been a great show as always. We appreciate a lot of viewers and comments and questions, and it's going to be a great off season. We'll see. We're definitely going to be busy for sure in the off season to find out with a lot of things going on. So we'll find out what happens. Bubba, do you have anything?
No, not really. Just look forward to much brighter days
Amen.
In the future for Pirate football. That goes without saying. One of the lowest years in our program's history. And it's such a shame with it being one of the best years our defense has had, in 15 years. I was looking back at some of the numbers, and obviously 21 points per game in this day and age is much more impressive than 21 points 20 or 30 years ago. No, but this defense was right there with some that we had in the Holtz years, and then also some of those better defenses that we had under Coach Logan, where I can think of at least 3 or 4 seasons where we allowed less than 20 points per game. Like back in 99 and 95, 96. Some tremendous defenses. So much attention was on Coach Logan and his offenses, the way we threw the ball more than most, and then also his tendency to call trick plays, be it fake field goals or otherwise.
Right.
That how well we ran the football and how well we played defense often got lost.
No doubt. Look at Matt Semenza. We also had Mark Libiano during that era as well. That's been putting up questions and comments. We appreciate you guys. And Bays, obviously, you're from that era as well, being a specialist. And we won a lot of football games during that time. And I'm sure we're going to win a lot of football games in the future too. This is a terrible season. Go ahead.
Bays ran a dude over against West Virginia, by the way. He stiff armed one dude, right? And then the next guy tried to tackle him. He ran him over. So just so you know, punters are tough too, fellas. And Bays, you have the footage of that, right?
I've got it. I've got the footage. 100%.
He showed he can dribble a football, a very, very impressive skill.
Off the turf, man. Not many people can do that.
By the way, Sean Richardson, he's also here tonight, tight end. What's up, brother?
What's up, Sean?
No doubt. We all just want to win.
Sean Richardson, Mark Libiano. What's up, guys?
Yes, a reunion of the 90s.
Yeah, I also have footage of Bubba. Bubba Bays. Bubba was a quarterback. And we were talking, like, Bubba's style, believe it or not, was kind of like Tebow. He would just try to run people over, like put the head down. And I saw some footage of Bubba, like literally steamrolling 2 linebackers and taking one to the house. So some impressive, players on this panel.
No doubt.
One other thing I will say, Dave, before we get out of here,
you guys got real quiet.
Yeah, you got very quiet.
No, one thing that I will say before we get out of here is, if anything breaks, whether it's, a state of the program address from John Gilbert and Mike Houston, or should anything break concerning Coach Houston's future with the program, then we will certainly go live as soon as possible. So stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, and then also that you like and follow us on Facebook. That way, whenever we go live, you'll be alerted on your device.
No doubt, guys. It's been a great show. Thank you, Semenza. Thank you, Bays, Bubba. Appreciate you guys very much. And thanks to Kevin Walker. He actually is a part of the 1983 team. And, of course, Bubba, didn't he graduate in 85 off the top of my head? But he's definitely one of the best players to ever play.
That sounds right. That sounds right. But
he is part of L&K Custom Homes, and they bring the Pirate Football Playback each and every week. Thank you, Kevin, for that. He's a licensed general contractor. Call him at 336-688-8461. Want to give a shout out to everybody in Pirate Nation. We are going to be better, no doubt about it, whichever way we go. And just hang in there, and things will happy days will be here again. Until next time, this is Dave Richmond for everybody here at the Sports Objective. Again, the Pirate Football Playback. Good night, everybody, and go Pirates.